These aren't just weight loss stories. This is what happens when love turns into enabling, when family becomes the enemy, and when the scale becomes a matter of life or death. From a 16-year-old forced to bathe her own aunt, to a man who called the police on his father over a pizza. These are the most extreme cases Dr. Now has ever seen.
My obesity is my fault, and I take the blame for it.
Okay, so what do you want me to do for you?
This looks really yummy.
Oh, me, fat?
You are true! I never said it wasn't!
Kelly's story opens in a place that feels almost impossible to watch. This isn't just a woman struggling with her weight. This is someone whose body has become a daily trap, turning the smallest human tasks into painful, humiliating battles. Walking to the bathroom feels like a mission. Standing for a few minutes feels like her back and legs are giving out. Even taking a shower is no longer normal, because one slip could leave her stranded on the floor, helpless, terrified, and waiting for someone strong enough to get her back up. And the saddest part is, Kelly knows exactly how bad it has gotten. She is not sitting there pretending everything is fine. You can hear it in the way she talks about her pain, like her body is breaking down piece by piece, and she is just trying to survive another day inside it. There is fear in her voice, but also shame, exhaustion, and this quiet awareness that time is running out. This isn't someone casually making bad choices. This is someone drowning in a cycle she helped create, but no longer knows how to escape. Then her past comes out, and suddenly the food addiction stops looking simple. Kelly was hurt when she was young, and when she needed protection the most, the people around her failed her. That kind of betrayal doesn't just disappear. It follows you. It changes how you see safety, comfort, and love. So food became the one thing that didn't reject her, didn't question her, and didn't make her feel powerless. It became her escape long before it became her prison. But then her father walks in with food, and that is where the whole situation becomes even harder to stomach. He says he cares. He says he wants to check on her, but he shows up with pizza, the exact thing keeping her locked in this condition. And you're watching it thinking, how do you not see what you're doing? That is not support. That is enabling with a smile on its face. Love should not be handing someone the weapon that is slowly destroying them. By the time Kelly finally gets to Dr. Now, the urgency is undeniable. Her BMI is dangerously high, her heart is already under pressure, and Dr. Now does not soften the truth. She is not in a place where she can keep saying, "I'll do better later." Later might not exist for her. Her body is already sending warnings, and every extra day in the same routine is another gamble with her life. The trip to Houston proves just how fragile everything has become. She collapses trying to get out of the car, and what should have been a normal appointment suddenly turns into an emergency scene. Her friend can't move her. She is crying, panicking, and stuck in public, while firefighters have to come help. It is humiliating, scary, and honestly heartbreaking, because in that moment, you see the full reality of her condition. She is not just limited, she is at the mercy of her own body. Even when she gets placed in a controlled rehab setting, the addiction still finds a way to fight back. The hospital gives her structure, doctors, meals, supervision, everything she needs to finally get control. And yet Kelly still complains about the food and starts ordering takeout. That is the kind of moment that makes you want to yell at the screen, because she is literally surrounded by people trying to save her life, and the old habits are still pulling her back like a chain around her neck. So when Dr. Now confronts her after the scale shows she gained weight instead of losing it, he has no choice but to be blunt. There is no soft way to say, "This is killing you." There is no gentle version of the truth when someone is eating themselves deeper into heart failure. But somehow, after that brutal reality check, something finally shifts. Kelly starts making progress. She loses weight, earns the chance to leave rehab, and for a moment, it really feels like this might become one of those rare comeback stories. But sadly, her body had already been pushed too far for too long. Just when hope finally starts to show up, Kelly passes away from cardiac arrest, and that is what makes her ending so devastating. She was not completely refusing help anymore. She had started trying. She had started fighting. But sometimes change comes too late, and the damage has already gone deeper than the body can recover from. Her story ends as one of the most painful reminders that waiting too long can cost everything.
Doing the damage from years of unhealthy choices. Sometimes, in the end, the damage was just too great. And what we do only ends up having a minimal effect. But that doesn't make outcomes like this any easier to accept, especially when Kelly was working so hard and making such good progress.
Justin's story doesn't begin with screaming, excuses, or some wild blow-up in front of Dr. Now. It begins much quieter than that, and somehow that makes it even sadder. Justin is a man who has slowly disappeared from his own life. He avoids mirrors because seeing himself is too painful. He avoids going outside because being looked at feels unbearable. His world has shrunk down to a few rooms, a few routines, and the constant fear of being seen. And in that small world, food becomes the only thing that feels safe. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't judge him. It doesn't leave. But every bit of comfort comes with a price. The more he eats, the heavier he gets. The heavier he gets, the more anxious he becomes. And the more anxious he becomes, the more he hides. It is a quiet cycle, but it is destroying him just as badly as the loud, chaotic ones. Then his childhood starts to explain why food had such a strong hold on him. Justin grew up with a mother who struggled with addiction, and that meant instability became normal for him way too early. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't, sometimes he could count on her, sometimes he couldn't. So food became the one thing that stayed consistent when everything else felt unreliable. When his mother comes back into his life, you can tell their bond still has a lot of love in it, but it is also tangled up in the same old pattern. Her way of showing care is cooking for him, feeding him, bringing comfort through food, and for Justin, accepting that food feels familiar, almost like accepting love. But that is the painful part. The same thing that makes him feel wanted is also helping keep him trapped. By the time Justin gets to doctor, now the scale makes the situation impossible to ignore. He knew he was big, but seeing a number close to 700 pounds hits differently. That is not just a weight problem anymore. That is a life-threatening reality. Doctor now gives him a strict goal, and there is no room left for denial. If Justin wants surgery, he has to prove he can change before anybody takes him into an operating room. But what makes Justin different is that he actually starts doing the work. He moves to Houston, changes his eating, and slowly begins to understand that not everyone who loves him can be part of his recovery in the same way. When his mother pulls back from helping him move, it hurts, because it touches that old wound of being left to figure things out alone. But this time, instead of completely shutting down, Justin starts learning who he can truly rely on. One of the most powerful moments in his story is the conversation with his father. It is not dramatic in a loud reality TV kind of way, it is just honest. Justin finally speaks about the neglect, the fear, and the emotional weight he carried for years, and sometimes that is the real breakthrough. Not the scale, not the surgery, but the moment someone finally says out loud what they have been burying for most of their life. After months of steady progress, Doctor now approves him for surgery, and it feels earned. Justin didn't just walk in begging for a miracle, he showed discipline. He followed the plan, he proved he was serious, and that is why the surgery feels like a tool he is ready for, not some magical rescue that is supposed to fix everything for him. Later, Justin has to do something just as important as losing weight. He has to set boundaries, especially with his mother. That matters because this journey was never only about calories, it was about emotional patterns, family wounds, comfort, dependence, and learning how to protect his progress without feeling guilty for it. By the end, Justin feels like someone slowly stepping back into the world after hiding from it for years. He moves more, he speaks with more confidence, he reconnects with his father, he even does things that once sounded completely impossible, like flying a plane. His story is powerful because it is not built on chaos. It is built on quiet growth, accountability, and a man finally realizing he deserves to live instead of just exist. Lisa's episode doesn't ease you into anything. It drops you straight into a house where the tension is already boiling. She is stuck in bed, in constant pain, and completely dependent on the people around her for almost everything. But somehow, even from that bed, Lisa still controls the entire room. Everybody moves carefully, everybody watches her mood. One wrong sentence, one small mistake, and the whole house feels like it could explode. And that is what makes her situation so exhausting to watch. Lisa says she hates living this way, and honestly, you believe her. But at the same time, the household has learned how to survive around her anger. Her daughter helps clean her. Family members bring her what she asks for. People give in because fighting back only creates more chaos. At some point, the routine stops looking like care and starts looking like damage control. Then her childhood story adds another layer to it. Food was never just food for Lisa. It was tied to punishment, control, and emotion from the beginning. One moment she was denied something she wanted. The next she was forced to eat as a form of discipline. That kind of relationship with food can twist a person's mind for years. Hunger, comfort, shame, power, all of it gets mixed together until eating becomes about much more than appetite. But the physical reality of Lisa's condition is where the episode gets really disturbing. The hygiene scenes are hard to sit through because this is not just someone who needs help cleaning up. This is medical neglect. Her skin folds are infected, her body is breaking down, and the danger is not theoretical anymore. This is the kind of condition where embarrassment is no longer the main issue. Survival is. When Lisa finally gets to Houston, she tries to act like she has been making progress, but the scale exposes everything. Over 700 pounds, far higher than she claimed. Doctor now immediately cuts through the excuses and makes it clear that if she had actually followed the diet, that number would not be staring back at them. It is one of those moments where the scale says what nobody else can talk their way out of. Back home, the food tells the same story. Junk food is everywhere, and when she gets confronted, Lisa tries to shift the blame onto other people. Maybe it belongs to her boyfriend. Maybe someone else bought it. Maybe it has nothing to do with her. But come on, if that food is in the house, and Lisa is not losing weight, everybody already knows what is happening. Then the relationship dynamic gets even messier. Food is not just food anymore. Ice cream, snacks, and junk become rewards, leverage, and little bargaining chips inside her relationship. That is when the situation starts feeling almost transactional. Instead of helping her fight the addiction, the people closest to her are feeding it, sometimes literally, and sometimes emotionally. By the time Lisa is face to face with Dr. Now again, everything finally boils over. She says she has no willpower. She raises her voice. She pushes back against the program like the rules are personally attacking her. She wants help, but only if the help feels comfortable. And Dr. Now is not there to comfort the addiction. He is there to confront it. Then the conversation takes a darker turn when Lisa makes an extreme statement about hurting herself. Dr. Now takes it seriously, as he should, and brings in psychiatric support, but he also sees the pattern underneath it, the timing, the pressure, the attempt to shift control of the room. And after the evaluation, the conclusion becomes clear. Lisa is not ready to participate in the program honestly. So her journey doesn't end with a transformation. It ends with resistance. No big breakthrough. No emotional reset. No clean turning point where everything suddenly makes sense. Just the same habits, the same deflections, the same people orbiting around her needs, and the same unwillingness to truly change direction. Lisa's story is frustrating because the help was there, but she wanted control more than accountability. Lupe's reality is almost impossible to process at first. She hasn't walked in 10 years, not months, a full decade without standing on her own 2 feet. She's entirely confined to her bed, dependent on others for everything, and the scar from the diabetic coma she once suffered still sits on her body as a constant reminder of just how close she came to losing everything. Her childhood offers a glimpse into where this all began. Left alone for hours as a small child, scared and waiting for someone who never came back, that kind of abandonment leaves a mark that doesn't fade. Food became the one thing that never left her, the one constant she could count on. It doesn't excuse where she ended up, but it explains the roots of a pattern that would define the rest of her life. In the present, the household routine makes the dynamic painfully clear. She asks for nachos, and despite his hesitation and complaints, Gilbert still goes and gets them. He talks about loving her, but his actions keep feeding the very problem trapping her. It's a loop they both recognize, yet neither one has the will to break it. Then comes a moment that reveals just how fragile everything has become. A simple trip to the bathroom turns into a full-blown emergency when the toilet seat gives out beneath her. She's stuck, panicked, and firefighters have to be called just to get her free. It's humiliating and dangerous, and it drives home how unstable her day-to-day life truly is. While she's recovering in the hospital, another blow lands. She overhears Gilbert on the phone making plans with another woman. The timing is brutal. She's at her most vulnerable, healing, and now facing betrayal on top of everything else. Whatever fragile support system existed starts to crack right in front of her. After surgery, the next challenge is simply getting out of bed, and fear keeps her frozen in place for days. Dr. Now keeps pushing, reminding her that the surgery only works if she does the work that follows. The opportunity is there, but the mental barrier is real, and her prolonged inactivity is quietly creating a dangerous situation of its own. Then finally, the scale reflects real progress, down to around 360 pounds. It's a massive shift from where she started. Despite the fear, the setbacks, and everything working against her, her body is responding, and it's undeniable proof that the effort is paying off. By the end, she's outside in a park, feeling the breeze, sitting upright, fully present in a moment that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. After a decade trapped indoors, something as ordinary as sitting outside becomes a genuine milestone, proof that even after so much lost time, change is still possible. Welcome to Obesity Files. Donald Shelton's story on My 600 lb Life was never just about weight. It was about a man whose body had become a prison, whose past had followed him into adulthood, and whose chance at a normal life kept slipping away every time he seemed close to getting it back. When viewers first met Donald, he was only 34 years old, but he was already living with the kind of limitations most people do not face until the very end of life. At 675 pounds, every movement was difficult.
It's hard to watch him, just the decrease in his health, and it can't be healthy for his heart. I'm more concerned about that than anything else.
Every day carried a medical risk, and even the simple parts of life had become almost impossible. He cannot just get up, walk around, go outside, or live independently like other people his age. His legs could no longer carry the weight of his body, and because of that, Donald had to rely heavily on his parents for help with daily life. For most people, walking across the room is something they do without thinking. For Donald, it was a battle, and behind that battle was a much deeper problem. Food had become more than just food for him. It had become comfort, escape, and a way to cope with pain that had been building for years.
He don't want you to help him, but he knows that we got to help him.
He can't get up, so I bring his food to him. I help him get dressed. He has to have his clothes washed.
Because he can't do it on his own. He's too big.
They help me out, everything. They could be doing a lot of stuff instead of sitting around here. Because they have to help me.
By the time he appeared on the show, Donald was facing the reality that if he did not change soon, his weight could kill him. His heart was under extreme pressure, his mobility was disappearing, and his future was shrinking fast. That is why his family turned to Dr. Now. But as always, Dr. Now was not there to give him an easy way out. He made it clear that surgery was not a magic fix. Donald had to prove he was ready to change before he could even be considered for gastric bypass surgery.
This weight that put a lot of pressure on the heart and lung, so the body function is not normal to begin with.
He was placed on a strict diet, told to take control of his eating, and pushed to show real commitment. For someone who had lived for years in a cycle of addiction, pain and dependence, that was not simple. But Donald surprised people. He showed effort. He listened. He began losing weight, and for the first time in a long time, it looked like there was real hope. Viewers could see why his story stood out. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. He had the support of his parents, he had medical help, and he had a chance to reclaim a life that his weight had almost taken away. After losing enough weight to show Dr.
Donald, your operation's finished. Everything went very well.
He's doing okay. He's got some ice chips. We're raising up his legs a little. He's complaining mostly about his leg.
Now that he was serious, Donald was approved for surgery. The gastric bypass was a major step, and at his size it came with serious risks. But it also gave him the opportunity to make a dramatic change. After the surgery and the diet plan, Donald lost a massive amount of weight. At one point he had dropped around 300 pounds, which should have been the turning point in his life. For a moment it seemed like he had escaped the worst of it. He had done what many people on the show struggled to do. He had taken the program seriously, went through the surgery, and lost enough weight to make a completely different future possible. But then his story took a sudden and scary turn. After the operation, Donald began having serious mobility problems. Soon he was confined to a wheelchair. Then the situation became even worse.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He slipped into a coma, and doctors were left trying to understand what had gone wrong. For his family, it was terrifying.
He looks great.
Proud for him.
They had watched him fight to lose weight, survive surgery, and begin moving toward a better life, only to see everything fall apart in a way no one expected.
Congratulate him, he's lost 200 pounds.
When Donald finally woke up, he received news that changed the course of his journey. He had Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder, where the immune system attacks the nerves. For Donald, this diagnosis was devastating, because it directly affected the one thing he desperately needed for his recovery: mobility. Losing weight after surgery still requires movement, therapy, exercise, and discipline. But now Donald was fighting a condition that made walking and physical activity even harder than before. The progress he had made was suddenly under threat. The same body he had been trying to save was now facing a new battle, that had nothing to do with willpower alone.
Next month he'll be down at the club. He'll be out there.
We'll see.
Yeah.
This is what made Donald's episode so emotional. He did not simply fail because he stopped caring. He was hit with a medical crisis at the exact moment when his life was supposed to be improved. And that crisis pushed him back into old patterns. Without the ability to stay active, and with depression starting to take over, Donald began regaining weight. The pounds he had fought so hard to lose started coming back. He had already lost hundreds of pounds, but now he was watching that success slip away. For anyone who has ever fought addiction, that part of the story is painful to watch. Progress can feel powerful, but one major setback can make a person feel like all the effort was pointless. Donald's food addiction did not disappear just because he had surgery.
Hey, Donald. Hello. How are you?
Okay.
He's talking.
Okay.
The emotional struggle was still there. The cravings were still there. The depression was still there. And now, with his mobility taken from him, the fight became even harder. His journey became a cycle of losing weight, gaining some back, trying again, falling into depression, and then trying to recover once more. He worked through physical therapy. He tried to regain movement. He began hydrotherapy, which gave him a way to exercise without putting the same pressure on his body. And slowly, he started making progress again. But it was not a clean success story. It was messy, painful, and uncertain. At one point, he regained a significant amount of weight after depression hit him hard. Then he managed to bring his weight down again. That is why Donald's episode leaves viewers with mixed emotions. On one hand, he had shown incredible strength. He survived a coma, faced a life-changing diagnosis, and still kept trying. On the other hand, his future was still unclear. He had already proven he could lose weight, but keeping it off while dealing with permanent mobility issues was a completely different challenge. What made Donald's story powerful was that it showed how complicated extreme weight loss can really be. It is easy to look at someone from the outside and say they just need to eat less or move more. But Donald's life shows that obesity is often tied to trauma, addiction, health problems, family dynamics, and emotional pain. His weight was not just a number on a scale, it was the result of years of struggle, and losing it did not erase everything underneath.
Too much for me to bear. All of a sudden, his frame of mind changed.
Even after the surgery, he still had to face the same mental battles. Even after losing hundreds of pounds, he still had to fight the urge to go back to food for comfort. And even after proving that he wanted to live, his own body placed another obstacle in front of him. By the end of his story, Donald had not received a perfect ending, but he had shown something important. He showed that recovery is not always a straight line. People sometimes make progress, lose it, and then have to start again from a place that feels even harder than before. Donald's battle was not only about becoming smaller, it was about becoming strong enough to keep going after life took away the progress he had worked for.
Donald, seriously? You're acting like a kid.
His episode remains one of the more memorable early stories from my 600lb life, because it gave viewers both hope and heartbreak at the same time. Donald was not a simple success story, and he was not a simple failure. He was someone fighting obesity, addiction, disability, depression, and fear all at once. And even when his journey became more difficult than expected anyone, he continued trying to find a way forward. That is what makes his story worth watching. Not because everything went perfectly, but because it showed the reality of a person trying to survive when his body, his mind, and his circumstances were all working against him.
My obesity is my fault, and I take the blame for it.
Okay, so what do you want me to do for you?
Welcome to Obesity Files. Today, we're looking at the 7 biggest dramas around Dolphus from My 600 Life. And starting at number 1, we have the family situation that made this episode uncomfortable right from the jump. When Renee appeared on the show, she was over 600 pounds, and her life had gotten to the point where she could barely function on her own anymore. She was living in a full house with her family, including her 3 nieces and nephews, and every single person in that house had to help take care of her in one way or another. And that is already a pretty sad situation, because Kenay wasn't just asking for a little help here and there. She needed help with almost everything. Standing up was painful. Walking was painful. Even getting to the bathroom had turned into a whole process. She said she couldn't stand on her own for more than about 45 seconds, and if she made it to a full minute, she would be in tears.
I can't stand up on my own for more than about 45 seconds.
So right away, you can tell this wasn't just about being overweight. Her body was already breaking down, and the whole family was being dragged into it with her.
Alicia! Come on, babe. I'm ready to get washed up.
But the part that really had people side-eyeing the situation was her teenage niece, Alicia. Alicia was only 16 years old, but she had to help Kenay bathe, help her get dressed, and then help clean everything up afterward. And look, I get it, Kenay needed help. Nobody is pretending she could just magically do everything by herself. But let's be real, a 16-year-old girl should not be responsible for washing and dressing her adult aunt. That is way too much for a kid. At that age, Alicia should have been worrying about school, friends, and normal teenage stuff, not acting like a full-time caregiver in her own home. And the crazy thing is, Kenay even admitted that everyone had to help her in some way, but the episode still made it feel like the family had just accepted this as normal. That's what made this so uncomfortable to watch. Kenay's weight wasn't just ruining her own life anymore, it was spilling over onto everybody around her, especially the kids. And when your nieces and nephews are being pulled into your daily care because you can't stand for more than a minute without crying, that's not just a personal struggle anymore. That's a whole family crisis. The second big drama is that Kenay's whole household was basically built around food. What made it even worse is that Kenay wasn't just eating whatever people gave her, she was the one buying the groceries, planning the meals, and cooking for everybody.
I actually manage food in the house. I buy the groceries, I do the meal planning.
You cook for everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the person struggling the most with food addiction was also the person controlling what the entire family ate, which is honestly a disaster waiting to happen. Instead of creating a healthier environment, the whole house seemed used to big portions, unhealthy meals, and nobody really telling Kenay no. And that's exactly how enabling works. It doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes it looks like family just trying to keep the peace, but in reality, they were helping her stay stuck. Dr. Now noticed this immediately. He told her that she was using her family as a crutch, and he also pointed out that the kids in the house were overweight too. That part is actually scary.
I'm sure that a doctor would tell us they were all overweight.
Because it means the same habits that destroyed Kenay's health were already being passed down to the next generation. And let's be real, if the person with the biggest food problem is also in charge of the meals, the whole family is going to suffer.
And did anybody in the family would tell you you're eating too much, don't eat that much, or...
Will they tell me that?
Yeah.
No.
Nobody tell you that?
No.
Okay.
No one's gonna step on my toes.
Kenay needed support, but what she had was a household that had normalized the problem for way too long. Until that food dynamic changed, there was no way she was going to make real progress. The third drama is Kenay's breakfast, because this was one of those moments where you immediately understand how serious the food addiction had become. This wasn't just a big plate of food, this was a full-on feast before the day had even started. Her breakfast was estimated at over 3,000 calories, and it included things like multiple corn dogs, cinnamon rolls, a breakfast muffin, and a crazy amount of syrup. And honestly, that is wild. Most people hear 3,000 calories and think that's basically a full day of eating. But for Kenay, that was just breakfast. Not lunch, not dinner, not a cheat meal. Breakfast. And the uncomfortable part is that her family had to help prepare it, bring it to her, and basically support the whole routine like it was completely normal. This is where the episode stops being just about her weight and starts showing how out of control her eating really was. Kenay wasn't just eating because she was hungry, she talked about food like it was the one thing that gave her comfort, joy, and a way to escape how miserable her life had become. And yeah, that is sad, but it is also dangerous, because when food becomes your only source of happiness, it can completely take over your life. Let's be real, nobody gets to over 600 pounds from one bad meal. It happens when meals like this become normal. And that was the scary part. Kenay's breakfast didn't feel like some shocking one-time thing. It felt like just another regular morning in that house. So when Dr. Now later questioned why she wasn't losing enough weight, this scene pretty much explained everything. Because if 3,000 calories is only the first meal of the day, then the problem is not just hunger anymore. It is a full-blown cycle that everyone around her had gotten used to feeding. The fourth drama is easily the biggest moment of the whole episode. Kene's confrontation with Dr. Now. After her first appointment, Dr. Now gave her a pretty clear goal. She needed to lose 75 pounds in 2 months by following his 1,1200 calorie high-protein diet. But when she came back, she had only lost 22 pounds. And for someone over 600 pounds, that basically told Dr. Now one thing right away. She was not following the diet the way she claimed she was. But instead of just owning that, Kene got defensive fast. Dr. Now asked her straight up if she wanted to change her life or not, and she fired back that if she didn't want help, she wouldn't even be there. And yeah, technically that sounds fair, but Dr. Now's point was bigger than that. He told her that showing up to the office is not the same thing as doing the work. The help was already given to her. The diet was already given to her. The real issue was whether she was actually willing to take responsibility and follow it. And honestly, Dr. Now was spot on here, because Kene kept talking about how hard she tried, how she made changes, and how she couldn't have lost 100 pounds because that wouldn't be healthy.
So no, 22 pounds is not anywhere close to the 100 that you asked me for, but it is not 0.
But Dr. Now shut that down immediately and reminded her that at her size, losing that much weight was not the dangerous part. Staying over 600 pounds was. Then came one of the wildest lines of the episode, when Kene basically said she could have Googled Dr. Now's diet, and that was crazy because she came to him for help, but then acted like his advice was just something she could find online anyway. At that point, it felt like she wanted the surgery and the sympathy, but not the accountability. She was asking Dr. Now to save her life while fighting the exact instructions that were supposed to save it. And that is why this scene became the biggest drama of her entire episode. The fifth drama is the way Kene's emotional pain kept getting mixed into her weight loss journey. And to be fair, she had been through a lot. She found out she couldn't have children with her husband, which clearly broke her down. Then she lost her mom when she was around 35. And that seemed to become one of the biggest turning points in her life. Kene said losing her mother was the lowest point she had ever been in, and she started eating just to numb the pain. And honestly, that part is heartbreaking. She wasn't just saying she missed her mom, she said she never really got to mourn her properly, because her weight stopped her from even going to the gravesite. She literally couldn't physically walk to her mother's grave. That is a brutal thing to live with, and you can understand why food became her comfort. But this is where the drama comes in, because even though her pain was real, it still didn't change the reality of her situation. Kene talked about the grief, the infertility, the body pain, the hard workouts, and even how a tornado destroyed her home and killed her brother-in-law. All of that made her story emotional, but it also became part of the reason she kept explaining why she couldn't move faster. And Dr. Now had to keep pulling her back to the truth. He wasn't ignoring her trauma. He just knew trauma wasn't going to save her life. At over 600 pounds, Kene didn't have years to slowly figure it out. Her body was already in danger, and if she didn't lose weight fast enough, she might not even make it to surgery. So yeah, her pain explained how she got there. But it couldn't become the excuse that kept her there. The sixth drama is when Kene's health problems started becoming impossible to ignore. After she finally made some progress, Dr. Now ran several tests to see if her body was even healthy enough to handle surgery. And when the results came back, it was not good news. Her white blood cell count was elevated, which usually means the body may be fighting some kind of infection. And in Kene's case, she admitted she was having a cellulitis flare-up in her legs. That alone was already serious. Her legs were red, swollen, and clearly not okay. Dr. Now told her she needed antibiotics and also wanted her to see a hematologist, because this kind of infection could become life-threatening if it got worse. And honestly, that is terrifying, because Kene was already dealing with a body under extreme pressure. Adding a serious infection on top of that made everything even more dangerous. But the worst part was her heart. Dr. Now also found records showing that Kene had episodes of rapid heartbeat and atrial fibrillation. And that changed everything. Because surgery is already risky at her size, but with heart problems like that, Dr. Now made it very clear she might not survive the operation. That is when the episode gets really dark. This was no longer just about hitting a weight loss goal or proving she could follow a diet. Her body was literally getting close to a breaking point. Dr. Now told her she would not live very long unless she lost a lot more weight, and he could not approve surgery until the strain on her heart improved. And let's be real, this is exactly why Dr. Now had been so hard on her from the beginning. Kene kept acting like slow progress was still good enough, but her body did not have time for that. She was already living on borrowed time, and if she had not started seeing Dr. Now when she did, there is a real chance things could have gotten much worse fast. The seventh drama is what happened after the show, because even though Kene did make progress by the end of her episode, the story still didn't exactly turn into a clean success story. By the end, she had lost over 133 pounds and got down to around 482 pounds, which sounds like a huge improvement, and to be fair, it was. Getting into the 400s after being over 600 pounds is not nothing. She was moving better, doing water workouts, and she seemed proud of finally getting back to a size she had not seen in decades. But the problem was, her weight loss had started slowing down, and her health was still a mess. Because of her heart issues and other medical risks, Dr. Now had to delay the surgery again, and wanted her to lose even more weight before putting the procedure back on the table. And honestly, that makes sense. Surgery is already risky, but with her heart problems, Dr. Now was not going to gamble with her life just because she wanted the operation fast. After the show, things still seemed pretty rough. Kane was reportedly no longer in Dr. Now's program, and had to start seeing a local doctor instead. But even then, she still appeared to be struggling with consistency. In one Instagram video, she talked about having a fat day, and already feeling emotional before getting on the scale. Other posts had fans worried too, because she looked tired, out of breath, and seemed to be dealing with one hospital visit after another.
If Lee wants to mess up his life and his chance, I can't let it destroy mine.
Did Lee deserve the sympathy he got at the beginning, or did he deserve every bit of backlash that came later? Because this was not just the story of a man trapped in a 700-pound body, it was the story of a woman sacrificing everything to keep him alive, only to be repaid with anger, control, and abuse. Lee and Renee were supposed to be a couple trying to save their lives together, but very quickly their story stopped feeling like a weight loss journey and started looking like something much darker, because Renee was not just fighting her own body, her own pain, and her own food addiction. She was also carrying Lee's entire life on her back. Every morning, before she could even think about herself, she had to take care of him first. And that is what makes this story so uncomfortable. This was not just two people trapped by obesity. This was one woman slowly disappearing inside a relationship where love, guilt, dependency, and control were all mixed together.
Because I've gotten so big, my body feels like I'm in a prison. I'm just trapped.
Lee and Renee's story begins in a place that already feels hopeless. Both of them are severely overweight, both of them are in pain, and both of them know their lives are getting smaller every single day. But even inside that shared suffering, the burden is not equal.
But I can't even take the time to worry about myself. Because my boyfriend can't do anything for himself anymore.
Renee is still the one moving around more, still the one trying to handle the daily chores, and still the one taking care of Lee before she can even take care of herself. That is the first thing that makes this episode feel different. It is not just about two people eating themselves into danger. It is about one person becoming so dependent that the other person slowly disappears behind the job of keeping them alive.
I've always taken care of everybody else. And I've never had time to take care of me.
So once I finish with Lee, then I can finally take care of myself.
And when you look at their daily routine, it becomes clear how exhausting that must have been. Simple things that most people do without thinking, getting out of bed, walking to the bathroom, taking a shower, getting dressed, going outside, become full-day events. For Lee, even bathing is not something he can really do alone. Renee has to help wash him, help him move, help him clean the parts of his body he can no longer reach. And what makes this even sadder is that Renee is not healthy herself. She is not some strong, able-bodied caretaker with endless energy. She is also carrying hundreds of extra pounds. She is also hurting, shaking, and struggling to breathe. But somehow Lee's needs always come first.
He has to be laid down, and someone else has to hold the urinal for him in place, just for him to be able to pee. That person, 9 times out of 10, is me, and when I do it, I have to stand to do it. So therefore, it exerts me also.
I'm sorry, baby. One of these days, I'll be able to get out and stand and pee.
That is why the question on the thumbnail matters so much. Did Lee deserve sympathy, or did he deserve the backlash? Because at the beginning, it is easy to feel sorry for him. He is trapped in a body that is failing. He can barely walk, he needs help with almost everything, and he knows his life is slipping away.
Somebody helping me. I just feel bad because I know she's in pain and it's hard for her.
I'm miserable every day.
But once the journey actually begins, the problem becomes much bigger than weight. Lee and Renee finally decide to travel to Houston to meet Dr. Now, because at that point, they both know there may not be much time left. The road trip alone shows how bad things have become. They pack snacks before leaving, stop for fast food, and Renee is terrified because she knows that if Lee needs anything on the road, she will be the one who has to handle it. This was supposed to be the start of a new life, but it already looks like the same addiction, following them into the car. When they finally arrive at Dr. Now's office, the scale removes every excuse. Renee weighs 549 pounds, but Lee is even heavier at 714 pounds. That number shocks him, and it should.
Lee, you are 714 pounds, and Renee, you are 549 pounds. And you both have significant health issues as a result of your weight.
Dr. Now makes it clear that both of them are in serious danger, but Lee especially is running out of time. He has high blood pressure, sleep apnea, gout, high cholesterol, depression, and he is already on oxygen because his body can no longer handle the weight. Dr. Now gives them a clear path. Renee has to lose 75 pounds, and Lee has to lose 15 pounds before surgery can even be considered. For a moment, it looks like they understand. They go home, start moving more, try to cut back their portions, and for the first time in years, they seem to have a real goal instead of just another excuse.
Neither of you would be able to survive any surgery right now. To change that, you both need to lose a lot of weight. Renee, I want you to lose 75 pounds to get all your medical issues under control so we can safely do surgery.
And to be fair, they do make progress. Renee loses weight, Lee loses weight, and eventually they move to Houston so they can stay closer to Dr. Now and keep working towards surgery. Lee gets approved first, and after everything Renee has done for him, this should have been the moment he finally stepped up. But surgery does not fix character. It does not erase cravings. It does not create discipline, and it definitely does not turn someone into a supportive partner overnight.
Renee, you lost 31 pounds with the total weight loss of 73 pounds. And Lee, you lost 47 pounds. That's 142 pounds so far, huh?
After Lee has his bypass, Renee notices that he is already slipping back into bad habits. He is eating the wrong things, making excuses, getting angry when she questions him, and acting like the surgery was supposed to magically remove all responsibility from him.
And you're not losing weight.
I don't eat.
What are you talking about? You're choosing to overeat and you think it's okay?
No, I don't think it's okay at all. I guess I'm not eating the right things. I mean...
We gave you the instruction that you need to follow, and you're not following. You play your cards right until you got the surgery. And now you're playing this kind of game?
This is where the story turns from frustrating to ugly. Renee is still waiting for her own surgery, still trying to stay on track, and still depending on Lee to become healthy enough to support her when it is finally her turn. But instead of helping her, Lee starts dragging her backward.
He's still been overeating and doing things he shouldn't. And he's even starting to tell me that I shouldn't get surgery, and I don't know why.
They miss an appointment because Lee does not want to go. Renee says he knows he has been overeating, and that makes it even more selfish because this is supposed to be her chance now. Then the arguments get worse. Renee says Lee only treats her like a human being when he needs something. She says he calls her names, takes everything out on her, and makes her feel worthless. And when she confronts him, Lee does not take accountability. He blames her, gets defensive, and even says he does not want to be with her anymore.
We missed our last appointment with Dr. Now because Lee didn't want to go because he knows he's overeating, but it was completely selfish of him because it's my turn to get weight loss surgery. Things are even worse than ever.
By the time they return to Dr. Now, the difference between them is obvious. Renee has continued to lose weight even without surgery, while Lee has barely lost anything after already getting the tool he begged for. Dr. Now immediately calls him out. Lee tries to blame the wrong foods, fluid, throwing up, and even the fear of becoming malnourished, but Dr. Now is not buying it. He tells Lee the surgery is working exactly the way it should. It is forcing him to stop when he overeats. But instead of accepting the truth, Lee gets angry, shuts down, and tries to leave the conversation. That moment says everything. Lee wanted the surgery, but he did not want the accountability that came after it.
Hey, you're making me mad.
You sit down right there.
Hey,
You sit down right over there.
No, I'm...
Lee, sit down.
Okay.
Let go of me, Renee.
All right, this is completely unacceptable.
In the end, Lee and Renee's episode tries to leave us with hope. Both of them lose a serious amount of weight, and for a while, it looks like they might finally build the future they kept talking about. Lee even speaks about proposing, while Renee seems to be slowly finding herself again after years of living more like his caretaker than his partner. But real life did not become that happy ending. Lee and Renee eventually split up. After everything they went through together, they did not stay together, and Lee later married another woman in 2024. Then on January 29, 2026, Lee Sutton passed away away at the age of 51 at Mercy Hospital in Springfield, Missouri. That ending makes the story feel even heavier. Lee deserved medical help, compassion, and a chance to change. But Renee also deserved peace, safety, and a life that did not revolve around carrying a man who kept pulling her down. So when people ask whether Lee deserved sympathy or backlash, the answer is complicated. He was sick, but he also hurt the person who tried the hardest to save him. There have been many controversial patients on My 600 lb Life, but only a few managed to turn the audience completely against them. These are the people who were not just struggling with food addiction, but with manipulation, denial, entitlement, and a complete refusal to take responsibility for the damage they caused. From Stephen Assanti, who turned a hospital room into his personal battleground, abused the nurses trying to save his life,
This looks really yummy.
and manipulated his father for pizza even after being given chance after chance by Dr. Now, to Penny Seager, who seemed more comfortable being trapped in bed than actually fighting for the son and husband who sacrificed everything for her. Then there was Lacey Buckingham, whose relationship with Ricky became one of the most chaotic and uncomfortable road trips in the history of the show, exposing just how far she was willing to push the people around her when things stopped going her way.
Call me fat. You are. You are true. I never said it wasn't. Oh, okay.
So in this video, we're going to look at 4 of the most hated stars in My 600 lb Life history, not just because of their weight, but because of the choices, excuses, and toxic behavior that made viewers furious. And we're starting with the one patient many fans still consider the most impossible to watch, Stephen Assanti.
Need to stop soon. I am hungry.
So you're gonna wait, buddy, or we're never gonna get there.
I'm feeling very weak.
Stephen Assanti is not just one of the most controversial people to ever appear on My 600 lb Life. He became the kind of patient viewers could not look away from, because every time you thought his behavior had reached the limit, he found a way to make it worse.
No one can handle my weight.
From what I understand, Stephen Assanti suffers from severe psychological issues, so he's going to be a unique case.
Ordering pizza from a hospital bed, screaming at the people trying to save him, manipulating his father for food, abusing the call button, and turning every medical emergency into another excuse to get what he wanted. But before Stephen became the face of chaos on the show, there was a childhood filled with neglect, addiction, and pain.
I need somebody in my room immediately. I have been waiting. I want this light off.
His mother struggled with alcohol, his parents fought constantly, and both Stephen and his brother Justin grew up in a home where food was often the only comfort they could count on. The tragedy is that Stephen's trauma may explain where the addiction started, but it does not excuse what he became.
Stephen is casually asking for some pain medication, but his body language shows that he really wants it.
This is good. Yes. Pain medicine.
I never seen any patient like Stephen. He asking for pain medicine every 15 minutes, and then he spilled urine on the floor.
Welcome to Obesity Files.
By the time Stephen was a teenager, food was no longer just comfort, it was control. He was already over 300 pounds at only 15 years old, and instead of slowing down, his behavior became more aggressive. His father tried to help, but Stephen learned very quickly that if he screamed loud enough, threatened enough, or made life miserable enough, someone would eventually give in. One of the most disturbing stories is when Stephen called the police on his own father after an argument, then agreed to drop the charges only if his dad bought him a pizza.
It's the only time I want to have it, so...
What do you want?
Just a large pizza with cheese and pepperoni and 2-liter bottle of Coke.
That moment tells you almost everything about the dynamic in that family. Food was not just something Stephen wanted, it became a weapon, and his father, exhausted after years of fighting, became the person who kept handing him that weapon. By adulthood, Stephen was no longer just overweight. He was trapped inside a body he had helped destroy, while everyone around him was trapped inside the consequences of his choices.
Well, you're gonna hear me, and you're gonna hear me now. And you're gonna hear me loud and clear. Okay? Clean out your ears and clean them out good.
When Stephen finally entered Dr. Now's program, he arrived at over 700 pounds and needed medical transport just to get to Houston. For most patients, this kind of trip is supposed to be a wake-up call. For Stephen, it became another stage for manipulation. He complained about being weak, lied about not eating, demanded food, and treated the people transporting him like personal servants. Once he got into the hospital, Dr. Now gave him a strict diet and a real chance to save his life. And at first, the controlled environment worked. Stephen lost weight because the hospital took away his ability to manipulate manipulate the food around him. But the second he realized the nurses would not obey every demand, the real Steven came out. He abused the call button, complained constantly, disrespected staff, and even made offensive comments about the people caring for him. Dr. Now saw the pattern immediately. Steven did not just need a diet, he needed consequences.
It is. Right now, Steven is not sticking to his diet. I'm taking out pizza boxes, cookie boxes, brownie boxes, and everything else that his dad orders him. He's not working on changes right now. He's just transferring his addiction to his new prescription, and he's abusing it.
That is what made Steven's episode so frustrating. The help was right there. The hospital, the diet, the doctors, the nurses, the equipment, the structure. Everything he needed was handed to him. But Steven did not want structure. He wanted control without responsibility. So when Dr. Now finally kicked him out of the hospital and told him he had to prove himself on his own, Steven broke down, begged, and acted like he was being abandoned.
I'm doing good and everything, please.
Unless you have an emergency, you will not be admitted back.
Please, I want him.
Steven will cry and he'll beg, but the reality is he doesn't care about change.
Dr. Now understood something Steven's family never fully accepted. If you keep rescuing someone from the consequences of their own behavior, they never have to change. And once Steven got back to his apartment, the mask slipped immediately. The first thing he wanted was pizza. Not a healthy meal, not a plan, not a fresh start. Pizza.
All right, Dad, I want pizza.
Oh my God.
It's the only time I want to have it, so...
What do you want?
From there, things only got darker. He missed appointments, abused pain medication, visited multiple hospitals to get pills, gained weight back, and proved again and again that he was not ready to take accountability.
Steven is abusing the system to get painkillers. And that behavior is not acceptable. Because right now, his addiction to pain medication is going to kill him before his overeating does.
Steven's story is hard to watch because underneath the anger, the manipulation, and the disgusting behavior, there was still a man being offered a way out. He just kept choosing the same prison.
Steven, you're lying about everything you're doing, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm suspending you from the weight loss program, and you're going from here to a drug addiction program.
After Steven Assanti, you might think my 600-balva life could not possibly show anyone more frustrating to watch. But then came Penny Seager, a woman who turned her bed into her bedroom, bathroom, dining room, command center, an excuse for everything.
This is my bed, this is my bathroom, this is my dinner table.
Penny was not hated because she was struggling. Viewers have seen countless patients struggle, break down, relapse, and still earn sympathy because somewhere inside them, there was at least a spark of wanting to change.
Sometimes it feels like I'm dead, like that I'm not alive.
If I could do it without the surgery, I would have done it. My way doesn't work.
With Penny, that spark was almost impossible to find. She had a husband who sacrificed his own life to care for her, a young son who needed a present mother, and a medical team giving her a chance most people never get.
Her weight has affected us in many ways. I have to go to all school functions. He's in Taekwondo, and she never actually seen him. I've had to videotape his classes for her.
She's a great mom, but you just can't be a good mom when you're in bed.
But instead of seeing the program as a lifeline, Penny treated it like an inconvenience. From the moment she described her bed as if it was her entire world, the audience could tell this was not just a story about obesity. This was a story about comfort, control, and a woman who seemed more afraid of losing her victim status than losing her life.
There comes a time when you've made yourself a prisoner. Once you understand that, you have to do everything you can to break free.
To understand why Penny became one of the most disliked patients in the show's history, you have to look at what her life had turned into before Dr. Now. She had been overweight since childhood, using food to cope with stress, pain, and abuse, and by adulthood, that coping mechanism had completely swallowed her future.
My dad was very abusive to my mom and to us some.
The abuse was something that no kid should have to watch your mom beaten. It wasn't every day, but it was every time he drank. Penny probably experienced a lot more of it than we did because she was the oldest.
Her husband, Edgar, became less of a partner and more of a full-time servant, bathing her, feeding her, cleaning her, and doing nearly everything she could no longer do for herself.
It's been many years now since we've actually slept in the same bed.
Right there hurts.
Right now, I'm her full-time caregiver, so I can't go out and earn money.
But the saddest part was her son Liam. Penny loved him, but love from a hospital bed can only reach so far. She could not chase him, play with him, take him to school, or be the active mother he deserved.
Her weight has affected us in many ways. I have to go to all school functions. He's in Taekwondo, and she never actually seen him. I've had to videotape his classes for her.
Everyone around Penny seemed desperate for her to get better, but Penny herself acted almost comfortable in the situation, and that is what made viewers so angry. Her family was drowning under the weight of her condition, while she kept acting like she was the one being treated unfairly.
We're gonna bury her, and Liam's gonna walk beside her casket. He's gonna watch his mommy be put in the ground, probably before he's 10 years old.
When Penny finally made the long trip to Houston, it should have been the moment everything changed. She weighed around 530 pounds, her BMI was dangerously high, and Dr. Now immediately saw that her biggest problem was not just physical, it was psychological.
A normal body mass index is about 20. 35 is morbidly obese. Over 40 is super morbid obese. And here's 85.7. That's very big.
Penny wore oxygen constantly, even though Dr. Now suspected she did not actually need it the way she claimed. To him, it looked like another symbol of her dependency, another way to prove to herself and everyone else that she was helpless.
I'm on oxygen 24 hours a day.
But if your oxygen saturation is better than mine, why do you need to have oxygen?
At first, the hospital environment did what it was supposed to do. With controlled meals and no access to fast food, Penny lost enough weight to qualify for surgery. But surgery was never the finish line. It was supposed to be the beginning. After the operation, Penny needed to walk, move, rebuild strength, and prove she was ready to take her life back.
So do you have any plan to walk? No?
Penny is unwilling to get up and walk around. I'm not sure why she doesn't want to do that.
You sure you don't want to sit up or?
Instead, she refused to even stand. While Edgar and Liam waited in a tiny apartment in Houston, hoping this sacrifice would finally be worth it, Penny stayed in bed, complained about the diet, pushed back against nurses, and slowly revealed that her attitude had not changed at all.
He needs to get his poop in a group or else I'm gonna order something. This is so stupid.
I'm very concerned about Penny's behavior. She's not losing weight anymore. She's being given the right diet. There is no reason why she shouldn't lose more weight while she's in the hospital.
That is where Penny's story becomes almost unbearable. Dr. Now had given her the tool that could save her life, but Penny kept acting like the tool had failed her instead of admitting she refused to use it.
But the miracle
right
are happening that you haven't lost any weight.
No, I've definitely lost weight.
Well,
Look at that, Lo.
really, your belly doesn't look like you have lost anything.
She argued that she felt lighter, blamed the scale, resisted therapy, and seemed offended whenever someone expected effort from her.
And you haven't lost any weight. You gained weight since the surgery. Okay? You should be right now walking. You should be around 250 pounds.
I feel that the scales were wrong in the beginning.
Even after going home, the pattern continued. Physical therapy became another stage for excuses. Healthy eating became optional. Appointments were missed. And then came one of the most infamous moments of her episode. Penny making wontons from bed and openly saying she could eat them all herself. That moment told the audience everything.
I cannot function without wontons.
But I can eat all of this by myself.
This was not a woman confused about the rules. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing and still chose the food. Dr. Now eventually made it clear that Penny had to want to walk, want to lose weight, and want to live differently.
Penny has to want to lose weight, and she has to want to be able to walk. If she apply herself, she has good chances as anybody else. But I don't see any willingness.
But wanting sympathy seemed easier than wanting change. And by the end, Penny had every opportunity, every resource, and every reason to fight. A husband, a son, surgery, doctors, therapy, and time. But none of it mattered, because Penny kept waiting for someone else to save her from a life she refused to leave.
I can't do this and I need to go home where I have family and support, and that would mean the end on this whole process. Maybe it's time for me to go home.
After Penny, the next person who pushed viewers to their limit was Lacey Buckingham, and her story was frustrating for a completely different reason.
There's no greater pleasure in this world than eating food. It's a more pleasure button for me than sex.
With Penny, the anger came from watching someone refuse to move. With Lacey, the anger came from watching someone pull everyone around her into the consequences of her own choices. Lacey lived in constant pain, taking nearly 30 medications a day, struggling to shower, struggling to walk, and even admitting she had not been able to properly wipe herself for years.
I wake up every morning feeling intense pain. It's constant now, and there's no part of my body that doesn't hurt. Having crackling in my bones, heat rash in places that never goes away no matter how clean I am. I have stabbing pain in my feet and really dull, crushing pain in my lower back.
But the most disturbing part was not just how far her body had declined. It was how quickly her new boyfriend, Ricky, became responsible for all of it. They had only known each other for about a month.
Thankfully, I have Ricky now, who's not like those other guys, because he wants the best for me. So we're together now, and I'm thankful to have him. Not just to have somebody to help me, but because I know he loves me.
Yet Ricky was already cooking for her, cleaning for her, helping with her bathroom needs, and acting more like a full-time caretaker than a partner.
So, Lacey asked me to come to the bathroom, and sometimes I do help her wipe herself. It doesn't bother me because I love her a lot, and I really like to keep Lacey happy.
And while Lacey kept saying she wanted a normal life, her own words revealed the truth. Food was still the greatest pleasure in her world.
There's no greater pleasure in this world than eating food. It's a more pleasure button for me than sex. It pleasures me. Food, it's everything to me.
To understand why so many fans turned on Lacey, you have to look at the relationship dynamic. Ricky seemed kind, sheltered, and desperate to be loved, but that made him the perfect person for Lacey to depend on. His sister Sharon saw it almost immediately. She did not believe this was some deep love story. She saw a vulnerable man being pulled into a role he was not emotionally prepared for.
Because Ricky is actually epileptic, and he has seizures, so I had to be there because he stops breathing. But also, he's sheltered. He doesn't really know much.
Get in the other side and pull me in?
Yeah, babe.
So, with his girlfriends, I gotta step in and put him through the ringer to see if they're gonna actually be there for him or if they're just using him.
Lacey needed Ricky to survive the day-to-day reality of her weight, and Ricky confused being needed with being loved.
How the do you guys know that you love each other and you only been dating for not even a full month?
It's like, okay, I don't know how to explain this. It's like I've known her for so long, you know, I have a...
That is where the relationship started to feel uncomfortable. Lacey was not just asking for help, she was building an entire life around someone else doing the work she could no longer do. And every time Ricky tried to keep her happy, whether it was cooking the food she wanted or helping her through another humiliating moment, he was also keeping her stuck.
Okay.
Don't forget my chocolate.
Definitely, babe, I won't forget chocolate.
The more he helped, the less responsibility Lacey had to take.
Don't worry about the kick up.
And Ricky's been helping me do my exercises. And I'm thankful because I don't think I'd be able to do much on my own without his help. So it makes me feel very loved and cared for when he supports me like this.
Then came the trip to Houston, and it turned into one of the most chaotic road trips in the history of my 600 Bellevue life. Lacey was supposed to be on her way to Dr. Now to save her life. But before the trip even gained momentum, she was talking about zebra cakes, cheese puffs, coffee, chili, crackers, and everything except discipline.
Had a really nice breakfast, zebra cakes and cheese puffs and coffee. And
You need to work on losing weight, and you gotta motivate yourself. And no one's gonna hand you, because nothing in this world's free, and people have themselves to worry about before they worry about other people.
Sharon finally snapped, and honestly, it was hard not to understand why. She was giving up her time, her energy, and her car to drive Lacey and Ricky across the country, while Lacey acted like the trip was something happening to her instead of something being done for her.
And no one's gonna hand you, because nothing in this world's free, and people have themselves to worry about before they worry about other people.
The tension kept building until the whole situation collapsed into one disaster after another: bathroom emergencies, public arguments, missed appointments.
She pooped herself, and she was taking a fart, you know, like anybody does, and, well, it wasn't a fart. And so, I think she needs to get off the fast food for a little while.
Excuses, and the painful realization that Lacey had not been taking the program seriously at all. Sharon was harsh, but she was also saying what the audience was already thinking. By the time Ricky finally broke up with Lacey on the road, the relationship had completely fallen apart. The man who had been wiping her, feeding her, comforting her, and promising a future with her suddenly realized he had given everything to someone who still was not giving the same effort back.
If you lie a little bit, making sure if you lie, it ain't gonna hurt nobody. That's what I do. When I lie to you, it's more just to basically start a conversation.
Lacey called the police, claimed she was being abandoned, and ended up stranded in the middle of a crisis that she helped create. And when she finally made it to Dr. Now, the damage was already done. She had lost nowhere near the weight she needed to lose. Her support system was gone, her housing situation had fallen through, and her belongings had been left behind.
Have no things, no furniture for their apartment.
Too many issues to tackle in your life right now.
Dr. Now could see that surgery was not even the biggest issue anymore. Lacey's life was chaos, and she needed to fix that before anyone could safely help her. In the end, Lacey's story was not just about obesity or food addiction. It was about dependency, manipulation, and what happens when someone keeps waiting for another person to carry them into a life they are not willing to fight for themselves.
Disappointed and scared right now because I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm not getting weight loss surgery.